I enjoy growing basil in my hydroponic system. Eventually, your basil plant gets too big for your system, and older plants and bigger leaves tend to be a little bit more bitter. In this video, I show you how I cut, clone, and propagate additional basil plants into my hydroponic system for continual basil supply. I generally like to cut basil above the nodes of new leaves. This helps encourage new growth on your existing basil plant. I read and watched videos that said it's actually better to cut it below the nodes of new leaves when propagating and cloning basil, but to be honest, I found success doing it this way as well. I like to try and cut and clone multiple basil plants in case some don't make it. I'll take my cuttings and then also remove some of the bigger leaves as well. I like to keep some of the leaves so it can have support when I put it into different bottles. I use these neoprene cloning collars to support my basil plants in the cloning process. I cut them in half because some of my basil plants don't have long enough stems. I like these collars because they fit perfectly into a 2-inch neck cup and you can wash and reuse them. I take my cut basil plant and support them inside of this collar. I then put this right into the 2-inch neck cup. It fits perfectly. Take note how far the stem goes. You'll need to make sure the water can reach the stem. I'll use whatever cups or bottles I have available and fill it with water. And then I place my neck cup inside, making sure the water is covering the stem of the basil plant. I have other multiple cloned basil plants growing at the same time. You should start to see roots coming out of the stem of your basil plant over the course from a few days to a few weeks. I recommend changing out the water every few days and making sure there's enough water in there for the roots. Now that my other basil plants are getting bigger, I use the same neoprene collars to support them. When you put these new basil plants in your neck cup, you'll notice that it's significantly bigger and roots reach the bottom of the neck cup. At this point, your basil plant is going to need more than just water, so I mix some nutrients using MaxiGrow. I generally use about 1 to 2 scoops or teaspoons of these nutrients per gallon. It works generally well for greens like basil and lettuce. At this point, your basil doesn't need full nutrient strength, so I mix about a quarter of the nutrient solution and fill the rest with water into a little starter container I use for my small plants. I put my container lid on, which has holes to fit my 2-inch neck cups, and I put one of the 2-inch neck cups inside. I use this as a guide to fill up the container with more water so I can make sure it will hit the roots of the plants I put into it. I like to leave enough room for some roots to breathe some air and the other part of the roots to get some water, as to not to drown the plant. I place my new rooted basil plants into the container. I check to make sure the water level is good and touching the roots but not drowning the plant. I like to have multiple plants being grown in case some just happen to die. Here I'm also planting a newly rooted Thai basil plant. I put these under my grow lights so they can get adjusted to its new environment. I'll let it sit here for a week or two so it will continue to grow and develop its root system. Every few days I check to see and make sure the plants are alive and watch its root system grow. It's fun to watch it grow. Once the root system gets pretty big, I like to then move it to my larger tote to give it the stronger nutrients and room to grow. Again, I like to have multiple plants growing just so I have continual growth and also in case some of the plants die. Eventually, the main basil plant I had is going to get too big and I'll cut that down to let the little ones grow. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking and subscribing.